Hello and welcome to another video from the Fantasy Legion. I've got Sean with me. We're looking today at the some of our rookie drafts. This is one of our high stakes league, the Megalodon, named after the massive shark because there's a lot of sharks in it.
A lot of big stakes league. This is big money league. That's £150 UK league, so it's a big buy-in. So a lot of vested interest in this league.
That's what $170, $180, something like that.
It'll be closing in on $200. That's a big league, yeah. So that's it's worth seeing. And if you've got leagues where you want us to go through the league and give us, our kind of thoughts on who picked or what we think of those picks, we'll be happy to do that. But for today, as Al says, it's the Megalodon. So where would you like? Shall we start with pick one? Or
let's start with pick one, yeah. So as you can see, all the top three picks were traded. In fact, quite a lot of them were traded. In fact, all but three of the top 14 picks. So it's a 14-team league. 11 of the 14 picks were actually traded at some point. So interestingly, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably the consensus number one. Went number one overall. You picked him, in fact. Talk us through why you took him and not, say, Jonathan Taylor.
Well, I'm all in because it's Kansas. There'll be doubters. You are going to see him on my bold prediction list this year. I'm not going to lie about that. We'll wait and see those videos to see how high and why. But if Kansas want you, Mahomes want you, the general manager want you, and the only bit they've been missing off their offense is a potential 3-down back or a back that they can line up all over the field, then I want you in a rookie draft. So it's very simple. So I went all in on him.
Yeah, high octane offense. I mean,
yeah.
I'm actually all in on the second guy, Jonathan Taylor.
I understand. Yeah, I understand.
Dan Carr took him, Motley Road.
Yeah,
he actually had 3 picks in the first seven picks or something like that. Yeah, and he took Jonathan Taylor. He also got Cam Akers and Jerry Judy, so he got quite a nice haul there. Yeah, I'm all in. John Taylor's more your prototypical old-fashioned sort of thumping running back, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah, and I mean, you can't go. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them, and I think both are going to be very relevant very quickly. Both will, yield different results. But for these teams, I can totally see why they've taken these two players, and no matter what way you argue it, they're not likely to fall outside the top 2, are they?
No, I don't. I think in all the drafts we've done, they've gone 1 and 2 overall. I don't think anyone else has been taken above them.
Everybody will have doubts on both players, and that's okay. There always is going to be. There's always a high bust rate with rookies. None of that. None of that worries me with these two guys. Both are going to be relevant.
The thing with Jonathan Taylor, obviously, he's behind a good O-line. I'm a big fan of his. I just like that I'm not sold on Clyde Edwards-Helaire as other people. I know he's landed in the perfect spot for him. It's a high octane offense, but I don't know. I just think probably both of them are going to share at least a lot of the work this first year, and that's true of all these running backs coming in, isn't there? There is some instant value, but not probably the big Ezekiel Elliott value where you're going to get back.
There is definitely very wise words that you said. I mean, as much as I'm all in on him, and I'm going to make an incredibly bold prediction for my man at the top here, the truth of it is I know the reality is the first few weeks of the NFL season, these rookies will be affected by it because they won't have the OTA camps, they won't have the training opportunities they would normally have to work with the first team players. So it is going to mean a slightly slower start for fantasy. And this has huge ramifications as you think forward to potential live drafts and, auction drafts and that kind of stuff. So plenty more on that.
Any redraft league this year is going to be interesting, isn't it? To see how people actually value these sort of top picks.
It's not easy to say, because at the moment in ADPs, both Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor are going quite high. And again, we'll use, because the audience that know us know, when we talk about our leagues, we're talking about very large 16-man live leagues. And this is very relevant because it's easier to scale down than it is to try and scale up. So we've got the experience of working with those large leagues. And the other thing that I hear a lot of from podcasters is about how players like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, they're falling into rounds 3, 4, just will not happen in our leagues. Even with the delayed camp, it won't happen. So You know, we know how valued running backs will be, and these guys will be no exception.
Well, the Indianapolis Colts came out and said they didn't see they saw sort of him and Mack as a they said it a one. They didn't want a 1-2 punch. They wanted a 1-1 punch. So they're both like eight fast running backs where they share the load. So it looks like they're going to use Taylor, and they'll certainly use Hilaire, and they use Damian Williams as well at Kansas. So it's just what share of that load they get, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, like, people, all I'm going to say is this, is that people will have their doubts over both these guys. And I've got no doubt early doors, it will be kind of the first few weeks, it will be a little bit limited, the workload that they get. But let's be honest, they weren't picked this high in the real NFL to sit there and ride the pine. They're ultimately picked because they're going to take over. So whether that takes 4, 5, 6, 7 games, they will take over. So you have to factor that in when you go to redraft and auction leagues, because you need to have a strong enough team to cope with early losses. And one of my favourite people, Simon, who's not involved in this league, said a great quote to me the other day about understanding the value of being even or relatively even after the first 5, 6 weeks of your fantasy season, and remembering that this year will be even more tricky for those rookies. So actually there should be more stock about the known quantities than there ever should be the rookies. And I think that's wise. Very, very wise. So, but in this draft, this big high stakes team, all these teams have got established teams and have different reasons maybe for picking some of the players they pick. But these first two are easy to chat about, aren't they, really?
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the next three. I think you're seeing consensus rankings. CD Lamb and Jerry Judy are up at 3 and 4, but there's no chance in our 14-man league that the top 5 running backs aren't going for first 5 picks. And you can probably argue the order. I know you're a big fan of J.K. Dobbins, but you're not going to get big instant value, or unless there's an injury to like Mark Ingram.
The truth,
going to have to sit and wait on, isn't he? Probably.
The thing is J.K. Dobbins will be highly underrated. I love the pick here at 3. I think it's a little bit ballsy. I like it at 3 because again, we're only minute. Some people are taking Dobbins at 5, some at 4. I mean, it's a minute change, a couple of places, but I really like it. And the reason I like it, particularly here for this league, is obviously this chap's thinking ahead. And I think we all know that maybe Dobbins isn't going to get kind of a carved out role. If you've got any doubts over the top 2, then Dobbins will have the biggest doubt because there's so many mouths to feed. But he will get work. He will still get work. And he will still get 8 to 10 or 8 to 15 touches.
But longer term, he's going to be more valuable longer term than shorter term, you think?
Next year is when he's explosive. He'll be worth a lot next year. But in the right offense moving forward, what an opportunity for the young man really to do well.
What I like about this pick is Mike's a Detroit Lions fan, and he had the opportunity to take DAndre Swift. And a typical pessimist from a Lions fan.
He's probably had a lot of pain.
Consensus. He went for Dobbins over Swift because it's the old Detroit, where running backs go to die normally.
Well, it's a very, very solid pick, and I really like it. I think it'll actually be better than most people think for year 1. I actually like Dobbins. Like when you look at these rookies and you think ahead to redraft and auction, I actually like Dobbins more than I do a lot of the higher value ones because he's going at a point where you could argue he's value, in redraft and auction league. Because you're not taking a big risk. In an auction league, it's a few dollars. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, you haven't paid a huge price. So you don't mind too much. Whereas with the other guys, you've got to pay probably a very decent premium. And you've no idea what's going to happen here year 1. So very interesting.
Right, okay. So we had Dobbins at 3, DAndre Swift at 4, which you'd expect. Them two are sort of interacted at 3 and 4 pretty much throughout the draft we've done.
Another talented guy.
Probably not the best landing spot. That's probably the thing that puts you off. He could have been 101 and, if he'd gone to KC or even a better...
Well, I mean... Let's pull this back a little bit. I mean, look, it isn't bad. I mean, I know that Detroit have had problems with running back, but he is a pretty unique person. He was arguably the 101 before landing spot. So, I think he could easily do very well out the gate, and I think he's got nothing to beat out here. I mean, as much as Kerry Johnson...
Carry on. They said they're going to use both again, but...
Well, that's, I think in his case, this isn't the same as Dobbins. I mean, Dobbins has got to play up against Mark Ingram.
No, I don't think so, because I think Ingram's a more established...
Well, exactly.
More established.
And the thing is...
You'd expect him to be the number one, wouldn't you?
Well, exactly. And Ingram is...
DAndre Swift and Carry On, I would expect Swift to get slightly more...
The job.
Carry On. Yeah.
I think absolutely, and that's why I think it's not bad at all. And you could see him easily going above 1,000 yards rushing year one. He can have 300, 400, 500 yards receiving. It's a very, very good pick, and I think Detroit will look back at this and think, yeah, we got a really good player here, and I think it's what they're missing. It's what they're missing. It's been a missing ingredient for them, and I think it will fit the team very well. So. I certainly don't mind Swift at all. And I think the order of the first four here is really spot on in my view.
Yeah. And then we've got Cam Akers at 5, which is no surprise in our leagues. Running backs are money, aren't they, really? Everybody wants them. I know CD Lamb and Judy are potentially big stars, but in our leagues, you always see the running backs go first.
And this is the one pick where I think it's a really difficult one, this one, because I've already had this chat with Dan, who's Otley in this one, and he knows where I'm coming from, so it's no surprise. But I think it's affected how he thinks, which is a good thing.
He's got the opportunity, hasn't he, with Gurley gone? I mean, that job is there for the taking for him or Henderson or Brown.
Yeah, well, this is the problem. I mean, if you're talking in this league, he's got a good team, so yes, he can absorb the risk. And so for him, it's a perfectly understandable pick. I absolutely don't have a problem with it. But he has got to face the reality that it could be a really, really difficult pick to assess for 3 key reasons. The first one being, of course, that you've no idea how this is going to play out in terms of the Rams. They don't have the OTA camps that they're likely to need. They've still got Henderson on the books. They've got Malcolm Brown, is a bit like blimmin' Frank Gore. He just never goes away. He's always there, and he ends up with a lot of work. So he's not old, but he's always got a job. He's always got some work. So
when he plays, you can't.
And it's the Rams. And it is the Rams, and we are in free fall. And anybody that doesn't sort of get it, we've got problems. We've got issues with salary cap.
Bigger problems than you.
They might do, but what you're about to see from the Rams this year is going to be pretty shocking. Get ready for the off-season issues. Get ready for the on-season issues. Get ready for the salary cap argument. It's going to be a mess. We've got a few years of real rebuilding here.
I can see you winning 8 to 10 games. I don't see it. You're not going to be poor, but you're not going to be outstanding either.
We're not. We're going to be chasing a lot of games. There's going to be some exciting games from the Rams because we're going to be in some shootouts.
And you run the ball a lot of the line. Gurley was running the ball in all the time last year, even though he wasn't really himself. He still got his points by getting touchdowns. So maybe Akers.
It very much flattered to deceive his value, and the Rams, thank God, cashed in and got rid of him. I don't mean to be horrible, but it was another big problem for us.
Well,
so yeah,
20 million hit. Tells you everything. Really.
And it wasn't that effective a line. I've got to tell you, the Rams line wasn't that effective. And the whole team really affected our defense because they're on the field so much. So, we got problems, and there's no doubt about that. So Cam Akers, perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, could be very tough. If he works out, and he might work out, and he could be super value there at 5. And I would, he could challenge for the number 1 spot when you look back a year from now. No doubt about that. Absolutely no doubt. It's just I do have huge reservations on him.
Okay. Next, normally at this sort of 6 and 7 mark, we've been seeing Lamb and Judy go. You can sort of flip which one you want, really. I took Lamb. It was my pick. I'm a Dallas fan.
It's great. Yeah,
I think Judy would probably do better earlier on, but I just like Judy's got a few niggling worries. Like Locke's got still it to prove. I think. I mean, he looks like he is going to be a player, and it looks like they trust him. But
I've heard every argument.
Dak is, if we can keep him, is a 5,000
Yeah, I've heard. I mean, there's now five wide receivers off the board here, one after the other, right? And they're all super talented. Obviously, Judy and Lamb at the top of the tree, if you want, from college on paper. The truth is, from year one, you're not going to regret this pick. And anybody that thinks there are a lot of mouths to feed in Dallas just has to remember this is a 5,000-yard receiving offense sitting here now with a lot of capabilities, and this guy can come in here and could quite quickly establish himself as the number 2 very, very quickly for a lot of reasons. And do not be surprised. Don't be surprised if in a year down the line, we're not even talking about Amari Cooper. So I'm actually very, very excited to see what this guy can do for lots of reasons.
I wouldn't write. I mean, being a Dallas fan, I wouldn't write off Amari Cooper yet at all. He's just got a big contract, so they obviously trust him. He's a good player as well. When if he can stay healthy, I think he's a decent player. But I think Lamb is as well, and so is Gallup. I don't know.
I think
Gallup's contract's up in it at the end of the year. So
yeah, well, I think you've got 3 very exciting wide receivers, but I can actually honestly, genuinely see Lamb carving out a role very, very quickly in this offense year one. People will argue what kind of role. I'm going to tell you now. I bet you he gets 1,000 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns. That's the reality of Lamb straight away.
No, that seems high for me. I'm very happy with it.
Let me tell you why. Right. So, out of all the people in this, now, if you go back, it's worth watching. Right. So, watch my video on the rookie Lamb. Okay, and you'll see in there that this guy, like Judy, they don't need the OTAs. Right. They're very polished, and Lamb is a very unique character because he can run all the polished routes, but he can also do very unique things. So he doesn't need this kind of OTA cam. He can come in and be very special for you guys very, very quickly. So I will not be surprised to see him do this year one. People might think they're going to start slow out the gate with these 2, but no, they can definitely carve a roll out. And I will be under no illusions how good this guy is. No illusions.
Jerry Judy as well. He looks like he's going to be the number 2 sort of almost straight away, doesn't he? You can't. Yeah. I think they're going to throw him in. So there's definitely opportunity for him. Same with Jefferson.
These guys are more than capable.
Minnesota.
Absolutely, more than capable of having an impact straight away year one. These are really high caliber wide receivers, and I've no doubt they'll carve out a very nice role. And Lamb and Judy, very capable of 1,000 yards. And you can just debate the touchdowns. They're very capable of it.
Yeah. So Jefferson went at 8. I mean, there's definitely, with Diggs gone in Minnesota, there's definitely an opportunity there, isn't there?
I'm a big fan of Justin Jefferson. I've taken him a number of times already this year, but I'm being honest now. So I've already taken him, and I didn't take him here. But I'm going to say this about him: I know what kind of offense Minnesota are. They're not a receiving offense. It's a run first offense, but he is taking over the Diggs role. So you can assume fairly logically that he's going to probably have somewhere between 85 looks this season, somewhere around about that range. Assuming that he catches about 60, 65, you're looking at about 800 to 900 yards and somewhere in the range of 5 to 8 touchdowns. That's the reality of Justin Jefferson.
I think as an owner, I mean, this is another Dan Nichols. You take that every day of the week from a rookie,
absolutely,
a rookie wide receiver. Yeah. I mean, the opportunity is clearly there.
Yeah, and if you don't like, say, for example, Lamb's situation, and you don't believe that he's going to do what I think year one, which is completely understandable, get that, and you don't think Judy perhaps is going to have an easy ride of it because he's going to be, covered by some good corners and safeties, Justin Jefferson's a very, very, very logical pick here, the 3rd receiver off the board. I again, have no problem with these picks. I think actually for this league is a benchmark of what I would call really solid picking right the way through the first few rounds here.
And this was Trey Daddy's 2nd pick, Jalen Reagor. He's already to add to DAndre Swift, so he's improved in the running back room and the wide receiver room. We've landed with the Eagles. I mean, that their wide receiver core was a mess, wasn't it, last year? We got
if you examine the various scores, that if you put all the receivers and work out their categories and you break them all down, Jalen Reagor is a guy that's been highlighted by a lot of people that his quirk score is very, very high. It comes off the board at number 1 here overall. Now, I think those are always very misleading, those kind of scores. But I think there is a case to answer that this guy comes in and has a defined role straight away and can do very, very well from the off. So, I have no problem with him and totally get it. I don't have a problem with him. And I think in the Eagles team, The only thing that worries me is they seem to use all sorts of players, lots of different pieces all the time. So
Yeah,
I think it's a similar kind of production, which is perfectly fine as Justin Jefferson year one. Probably carves out a bigger role longer term. Again, nothing wrong with that. Perfectly serviceable for your fantasy team. Like it a lot. Very good pick.
And this is you. You traded in pick. What are we picked 11 now? Pick 10.
Yeah.
Pick 10, isn't it? So you took Denzel Mims. So again, Ruggs was the first receiver drafted in the NFL. 5 have gone. None of them are Ruggs. You took Denzel Mims. You could have taken any of them. Why did you take Denzel Mims?
Well, I was surprised, if I'm honest, that the Packers in the real NFL didn't take him when he was sitting on the board. So I was very shocked that they did all the work on him and they know what kind of capability he is. He's landed in a brilliant spot. Basically, he could easily turn up, year one and have a massive role for that team. I love the guy's abilities all across the field. I think it's a great fit. And again, for Mims, I mean, again, we'll look back at these first sort of 5 wide receivers and we'll be able to see where they fell after year one. Very interestingly, how it worked out for the 5. They'll all do well. It's just a question of how well. I think Mims has a chance to elevate this board, but I've always thought that. I've thought that for a long time, that Mims is a secret weapon here. And I like him. I like him a lot at that pick. I'm not so much of a fan of Henry Ruggs or T. Higgins because problem is for me, I mean, as much as everybody goes, well, Henry Ruggs, there's no competition. Yeah, well, that also worries me because, he's going to face all the best corners and safety.
There is competition, but obviously, they spent a lot of draft capital with him, and they wanted speed on their offense. They got Bryan Edwards, who was taken in the second round, to complement him over the other side. A typical big wide receiver where, he's all speed. They're going to look to use him all over the field, aren't they? So,
if this was an offense, you see, I think the thing is with him is, I could get it if the quarterback they had was a big armed guy. And I'm not debating that Derek Carr doesn't have a good NFL arm. I'm not saying that because he's a 4,000-yard passer. So we could get into the detail, but his range of skills to me doesn't lend himself very well to Henry Ruggs. I think this is kind of telling. Because I think what they're really doing is, I can see why they've taken this pick, and I think it's going to be for the near future. So I think for this year, I think it's going to be very tough for Ruggs. I think it's going to be very, very tough on him. But I think longer term, maybe year 2 and 3, we really start to see that guy shine. And again, as you look back and start elevating, year 1, you look at these players, then you look at them year 2, and he could be a guy that starts really creeping up how good he could be. It just might take a year or 2 for it to shake out.
Okay, well, we sort of bypassed a few picks there. So we got St. Louis traded in. He took Keyshawn Vaughn, Tampa Bay. Obviously, picked him up in the draft. As we say, running backs are key. I'm not as big on Keyshawn Vaughn as other people, but I get the opportunity. I still think, dare I say it, Rojo has a role there as maybe the first and second down back, and Keyshawn Vaughn as a third down back because he's smaller. He's more of a scout third down back. But I could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe they'll use him, a lot more.
I think it's very difficult for him. I'll tell you why, because exactly what you said. I think Rojo has a role, whether people like it or not. People argue, and rightly so, that a couple of years ago there was an argument that Rojo's pass blocking was absolutely atrocious. I totally agree. 2 years ago it was. But actually, over the last year, the coaches have clearly worked on him. So as much as people have been focused on not his particularly very good running style and issues with the running game, he had improved last year, particularly in the pass blocking, which people seem to have completely glossed over because it's Rojo. So it won't be as straightforward for Keyshawn Vaughn to necessarily take that job straight away. And
the good thing for Keyshawn Vaughn is that he will probably get work first year, so that really adds to the value.
Absolutely.
So there's no problem with picking him down here. I absolutely get it. I've seen him taken above Jerry Judy and CD Lamb in some drafts, and that's because
that's where it would be wrong. I think in this draft, at that point of the draft board,
I have absolutely no problem.
Fine. I don't have a problem with that. I don't see any issues. I think you are shooting down here for gold. You're looking for gold at this point. You're looking for picks that can be value to you. Running backs clearly have a very big value if they land. I get it. and that's fine. I get it. But, again, with that pick comes the risk, and that's fine.
Okay, the next pick is very interesting. Gordon's a very maverick player. And he's picked up an interesting guy, Antonio Gibson. He does a bit of everything, running back, wide receiver, very explosive player, really good highlights. Got drafted by the Redskins. Obviously, this is a little high, but the good thing about these high-stakes leagues is people aren't afraid to go up and get their guy because they're so, you're worried about missing out on them.
Gordon said he wanted us to be honest, and I will be honest, and I will say this, and I hopefully this is fair, is that it is high, and I think, you could have got this pick in the next round easily. And I would argue that you will never see this in any other draft that you see all year long, right? So that tells you that you didn't have to come in here to get this player. And that's the only thing I would say.
Sometimes there's that thing in the back of your mind if somebody else likes him. I can get it. He's ranked 22 overall. He went 12 in ours. But running backs do always get a bit of they go higher than they should.
I think
higher than their rank in the consensus opinion.
I do think this is really maverick, and I really applaud bravery. I really do.
I love it. I do. I absolutely love it.
I really applaud that bravery. But I will say, he wanted honesty, and I'm going to say I think it's early. And I think what he could have done in this particular draft board is just he could have got the same player in the second round or traded back in the middle of the round if he was frightened of him being picked, because there was no way he's getting picked here. I've seen about 60 drafts, and he never gets picked inside the first 14. He doesn't barely get picked inside the first 20 in nearly every draft. I've seen it a couple of times, 20, 21.
Yeah, he normally goes around this sort of area, but but if you want your man, you go and get him, don't you? That's what.
But if you believe, and he's very good at this. If you believe in a guy and you want to have him, then you go and get him. And I will never put anybody off from going after their guy, because I will. So I totally understand that. And, it could be interesting, because one thing's for sure, he's definitely making some good waves there. Anthony Gibson, he's making some good waves at that place, and people do like him. So I'm very interested to see how this plays out, because it's a really interesting
Washington. I can't work it out. I can't work out what's going on. You got Adrian Peterson, you got Darius Geis, you got people.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
You got people like Bryce Love. You got J.D. McKissick's just signed a 2-year deal. You now got Antonio Gibson. I would probably others that I'm not mentioning.
Did you mention Bryce Love?
Yes, Bryce Love. I mentioned.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of players there. I mean, and the thing is, it's not clear. So that's why I'm more concerned about it. I mean, I'm not denying the opportunity. There is a bloody big opportunity if it lands. Christ, it's huge. But I just think that this is going to take no OTAs. No, it's just going to be a real boggy minefield. That could be a really great pick for best ball. That could be one of those picks, maybe even in an auction league where that comes through and you think, wow, I'm glad I picked him up for $1, or maybe I'm glad I got him.
It's certainly an interesting guy to watch.
Yeah, very interesting.
I actually had, and then I took Ruggs. We've talked about Ruggs. They're really keen on his speed, and they seem to want to get involved. They're very excited. They picked him above other people, and
gonna give him every opportunity to.
And
shine.
there isn't much to beat out. You've got another rookie in Brian Edwards. You've got Terrell Williams, who he's okay. He's not a world beater.
There's I've got to add.
I think they're going to use they're going to have 3 tight ends on the field all the time, like with Waller.
Yeah.
And,
I think it's worth mentioning this part of the video, because I mean, I totally understand the opportunity that Ruggs has got. There's somebody mentioned something quite interesting, worth watching. Actually, I'll say this all the time. I always plug the videos. We get some heavy criticism, right? So and rightly so, because we will be quite bold. But I think what people miss about this is when you're analysing players, a lot of your one would call fantasy advice actually has to come from your instincts and your gut because of the things you've previously seen. So when I talk about players like Ruggs or people like this, it's because we've seen players like this before and we know the difficulties that they have. And if I felt that he had the qualities to overcome some of those difficulties, I'd be very hard on him. But I think there are some issues yet for them to iron out. He will be good, but I think your investment in him there will take a year or two to come to fruition. I think what they're looking for is one more guy to go alongside him. And
they've got Brian Edwards, haven't they?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he'll be the total guy that they're actually looking for. But I think I could see that Mr. Carr, the quarterback, this is a big year for him. And if he doesn't deliver what they're expecting, i.e. make this guy shine and, really get the ball to him and things like that, which is what they'll be looking for from him, even if they have a bad or tough year, I think he'll be the one that will be facing replacement next year, because I think that's the way that this is looking. That kind of pick for Ruggs tells me that they're looking elsewhere for the quarterback next year if he doesn't shine this year.
When I was listening to their plans for the Raiders' plans for the offense this year, it was very much, we're going to play 3 tight ends, we're going to play smash mouth football, go back to the old fashioned run the ball with Josh Jacobs, throw screens to Ruggs and try and block, and use his 4.27 40 speed. He's a total speed merchant. With every player like this, you're going to get some really big plays where he looks like a world beater, but it's how many are there and can they get him in space? Because if they can't, he's basically a wasted pick. If they can, he could be a dangerous weapon in the NFL.
Well, he has. His biggest problem is breaking out of press. When he's pressed, that is his biggest issue. Now, at the next level, that's what they're going to have to work on very heavily with him. And again,
that's what I mean. I think they'll throw screens and things where they're blocking in front of him, so there's no one pressing him.
I think
they'll work on. But then you've got to make all these special plays just for one player. But they've got to look the same as other plays they do. So it's not. There's not.
Well, it always sounds like it's easy. It's screenplays and screenplays and those kind of type of plays are actually some of the most difficult things to execute well, because there are so many factors that can go wrong, or a play can be blown up by a good linebacker. And it's
a good player. I mean, a good player. If you think of, I went to watch McCaffrey in the flesh last year, and he was a dominant player on the field. He won the game actually for the Panthers at the Texans, and basically I thought it's so simple. You just put 2 men on and you stop it at all costs, and they tried and they couldn't stop him. He's that good.
Some people you can't. I mean, Henry Ruggs might be that kind of cat. He might be able to do it. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with him this year and what he shows, those flashes, like you say, of brilliance. And
he caught like 40 balls a year, so not high volume. So he might be big play rather than big volume. But
well, I think that's what I said. I think they've got a reason for him. I mean, I've heard some really weird things where people are saying, he can get. I mean, I heard this thing the other day, right? Somebody who said in a podcast, he can get 140 targets. Hang on a minute, whichever one.
That is a really bold. That is
right. Where in any receiver in their history has had 140 targets?
Not many.
the closest to it is Amari Cooper, but that isn't even close. So that's a little bit ridiculous. Now, the reality is, like you say, he comes from a college scheme where he's only had sort of 40, 50 targets. I'm not saying that's what he gets. He probably gets a lot more in this offense. I'm not debating that. But I do agree with you. I think it's splash plays and some really good things. But there will be some games where he just fades into the background. And then the difficulty might be, when do you use a player like this, particularly if you've got better options? So it's a tricky one. But there is a really big positive with players like him.
People will say he'll stretch the field and that. And he actually, for his height, he's actually got quite a good,
Do you know what?
His jump was really good, wasn't it, at the combine for his height?
Do you know what is absolute? Do you know what is really interesting though about a player like Mr. Ruggs? Right. What's really interesting is if you think in terms of, we go away from this league, big high stakes league, already established teams, and you just think forward just a fraction to say a normal standard, draft that you would have in August, July and August kind of time with your friends, family, or offices, leagues, that kind of stuff. For those drafters that are very heavy into the run first, let's get my bookends, let's get my running backs on the board first. There's a lot of these wide receivers that are going to be deep down the board. So you completely understand someone who gets one established wide receiver and then takes a flyer on a Henry Ruggs, because you could have 5 great players now, 3 good running backs, 2 great receivers. This guy could work out. So there's no risk for that. And even at this point of the draft at 13, really down here, you've picked a great player, because even if it's a slow start, first year, not so good, longer term, as I say, I definitely can see something there for him, and he could definitely mature into a very interesting player.
Well, I had sort of three of the next sort of 5 picks. So I had Zach Moss because I needed I probably needed running back help because, you know, you always do in these leagues. So I'm hoping he gets like 50%. And I didn't need a quarterback, so I passed on Joe Burrow. Well, I didn't pass on him; he was taken. And then Brandon.
Yeah, well,
and I had Brandon Ayuk as well.
Yeah, I think
in the middle of the round.
I think personally, I think Zach Moss is what they wanted to do. Buffalo, right? Yeah, everybody again's got this wrong. I'm sorry to say this. Go back and watch our Singletary video. I'm sorry to say it to people, but look, we were right about Singletary then. We're going to be right about him now. He has a defined role. It's a pretty clear role. Zach Moss is there to do the donkey work. Sorry, that's what he's there to do. Now, will he get work? Of course he will. He's going to get about 8 to 12 touches a game, Zach Moss. But the bloke that you're interested in is the bloke that they can split out wide, put in the screens, have 2 running backs in, and utilise his speed to stretch the field. That's what Singletary would do. The big issue with Singletary for this year, the big issue will be, particularly in redrafts, particularly in best ball, and particularly in auction leagues, is your issue is that a lot of the time in those leagues, touchdown is king, and I don't think he's going to get enough touchdowns, which is my concern. Whereas Zach Moss is going later, he might not get the yards, but he could get 8 to 10 touchdowns. So you're going to have to weigh out the value. You always tell me about
I think in
value.
PPR, obviously Singletary's a man to go for. And it's worth taking a flyer on Zach Moss in sort of standard and half point, where you're going to get the touchdown. Because like you say, he's a bigger back. You'd expect him to get the goal line work. But
I like him. I do like him for, I think he's again, if you take a different approach to the strategy, obviously this is a different kind of league, but
Right, I lost you there, Sean. Right, okay. Well, probably, I don't know what happened to Sean, but we'll leave it there, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.